DrudgeReport.com is alerting us to something that will stun many of you in months of being stunned. Just when you think the statist has hit bottom, they dig a little deeper. Listen to this from Reuters. With many U.S. newspapers struggling to survive, a Democrat senator today introduced a bill to help them by allowing newspaper companies to restructure as non-profit entities with a variety of tax breaks. Quote, this may not be the optimal choice for some major newspapers or corporate media chains, but it should be an option for many newspapers that are struggling to stay afloat, said the nitwit senator called Benjamin Cardin, if in fact that is his name. A Cardin spokesnitwit said the bill had yet to attract any co-sponsors, but it sparked plenty of interest within the media, which has been seen plunging revenues and many journalists laid off. Now, it seems to me any newspaper conglomerate, any news outlet for that matter worth its salt wouldn't want to be subsidized by the government, would it? I mean, because if the government subsidizes a bank, it can tell the executives how to behave, what they can use, what they can't use, how much they can earn, and so forth. Now, you newspaper types, you're independent, right? You wouldn't want any of this. Because it would seem to me, if you get all these tax breaks, which you libs used to call, tax expenditures? If you get all these tax breaks through tax expenditures, a.k.a. tax cuts, then you're owned by the federal government in one sense or another. And then what happens to your independence? But you really don't care, do you? Because you rely on the statist for your existence anyway. That's why you join the statists in wanting to shut down talk radio. That's why you regurgitate his talking points. And by that, I don't mean talking points that necessarily come from the government per se, but from the statist. You always support their agenda of nationalization, national health care. You always support their agenda trashing the energy companies. You always support their agenda with their interference in contracts and so forth. Now, there are exceptions, but I'm talking about the rule. Now, this is a disgrace. Here, once again, we have these statists deciding who wins, who loses, who lives, and who dies. And the industry they want to live is the newspaper industry. Now, why would they want the newspaper industry to live? Anybody know? Because it's in their back pocket. That's why. It's not like we don't have enough sources of information. We have more than ever before. What the newspapers need to do, to be honest, is declare their allegiance. Declare their allegiance to one party or the other. The 90% of the newspapers that already speak for the Democrat Party and the statist agenda should just do what they used to do at the beginning of the Republic. They can work out of the DNC. I bet they even have some offices open over there, or they can expand their facilities. Stop pretending to be something you're not. And we know exactly what your editorial pages are going to do every election. And don't tell me that's separate from the news department. Your editors are a bunch of statists, too. They decide the storyline. They decide what quote-unquote experts are going to be cherry-picked. They decide the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, for instance, the New York Slime's editorial page and the news sections promote the same policies. Except the editorial page is more honest. No, their editorials are dishonest, but they're more honest, and at least they call them editorials. Sometimes we use the news out of the New York Slimes, but we know what we're looking at. We know they're not objective. We have to call it, as we see it. But I do think it's time that they openly and honestly announce their allegiance to one party or the other, or to a particular philosophy. But don't tell us it's all the news that's fit to print, or as I like to say, all the news that's fit to wrap fish in. You're losing audience, you're losing subscribers, not just because there's an internet, not just because of talk radio, because you suck. That's one reason. Because you're unprofessional. Because you're turning off half the United States citizenry who want nothing to do with you. And that's also why the network news entities are losing viewers. Because you suck too. People are sick of you. So when you write off half the population of the country, or a third, or whatever it is, you're preaching to a much smaller segment of the population. And you deserve to go out of business. You know, there are other newspapers that can look at the D.C. Examiner and the Washington Times in Washington, D.C. They have audience. They have support. They have money. Money's pushed into them. Whether they make money or not, they're corporations or they're benefactors. Understand? Look at the Washington Compost. It's invested in dying outlets. Newsweek. Who the hell reads Newsweek? I can tell you this. Nobody under 103. And the Washington Compost. What do people read that for? The classified ads? Or, during the winter, to start the wooden logs in their fireplace. And it's very good at that, as a matter of fact. And so we have this dim-witted junior senator from Maryland who wants to propose a bunch of tax. Notice they want to give Hollywood tax breaks. They want to give newspapers tax breaks. They want to protect the UAW. They want to fund Acorn, but they want to cut the military. If they had their way, they would cut the VA. They want to undermine the hard industries in this country to promote the environmental leftists. This is why I call them statists, because they're about expanding their own authority and centralizing power in government. They're not constitutionalists. They don't believe in individual liberty. They don't believe in free markets. They don't believe in voluntary interactions that interfere with what they want. And that's the nature of who they are and what they are.